Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. We're just going to, depending on where you're joining from, we're just going to give it a couple of minutes for everyone to trickle in before we get started today. If you have a moment, maybe let us know where you're joining from in the chat. We're based in Sydney and in Melbourne. It's a bit of a grey old day here in Sydney, but luckily the rain stopped, so maybe we'll get some sun later. Auckland, Melbourne, nice. Perth, great.
I
Brisbane.
think
Oh, we've got,
we're both in Auckland next week. Both Weel and Eftsure.
yes. Yeah, for the CFO Horizons event. Um, yeah, it should be good. Ballarat. Oh, we have good representation. Nice. Okay. Well, giving it a couple of minutes. I can still see people are still joining. Um, might just give it 30 more seconds before we dive in. Sunny but cold in Melbourne. At least you've got the sun. It's just cold and cold and grey here. Alrighty. Think we might kick this off. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's session, Next Gen Finance Leaders, How Top Teams Win in Rapidly Changing Times. My name is Shauna. I'm a CFO community leader at the ANZ CFO community. Today, we're excited to be joined by Nick Decker, VP of Marketing at Eftsure, and Damon Hornstein, CFO and COO at Weel. Now, we're fast approaching a new financial year, and finance teams are facing more pressure than ever, from economic volatility and fraud risk on the rise to the rise of AI and evolving compliance demands. The expectations on finance leaders have shifted. Today, we're going to explore how top teams are responding, where they're seeing risks, what's working in practice, and how they're building resilience. Nick, I'll start with you. Could you give us a bit of an introduction and an overview of your role at Eftsure?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Nick Decker. I'm the VP of Marketing at Eftsure. Like usually, for those that aren't aware what Eftsure is doing, Eftsure is a payment fraud prevention platform. So we're helping businesses to make sure they pay the right vendors, and really with the goal to prevent payment fraud, basically due to cyber crime incidents or as well as internal frauds or errors even. So we make sure all those payments go to the right accounts. We're doing that for about 3,000 Australian businesses at the moment, and speaking to a lot of CFOs about this topic. I guess that's where I come in to talk about and tap into that knowledge of those conversations.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I'm sure you've your ear to the ground. Yeah, you're hearing stories from finance leaders, yeah, across the country and New Zealand too.
Mhm.
Damon, could I get you to do the same, give an introduction and tell us a little bit more about your role at Weel?
Yes, certainly. So Damon Hornstein, CFO, COO at Weel. My background is law, finance. I spent a decade in the M&A advisory team at Citigroup, helping large corporates primarily with their strategic and capital raising needs. Joined Weel about 4 years ago. Weel is a spend management business. We help leading businesses to manage their spend, basically all the payments that they need to make, helping set up smart rules and workflows, both pre and post payments. We work with about 3,000 businesses across Australia and New Zealand today, and process $1 billion of transactions per year. At Weel, yeah, my role is CFO and COO, but I think probably more relevantly for this conversation is I spend a lot of my time at Weel, and indeed in my time at Citi, just working with, supporting and helping CFOs grow their businesses and help them with their their problems. So always great to join conversations like this and perhaps share some of the things I've heard and learned along the way that could be of interest to others.
Fantastic, thank you. Some necessary housekeeping. We've all been on a webinar before. I think we're used to them now, but we'd love this to be interactive. So just a reminder to use the chat function if you've got questions, or the Q&A function, and we'll get to those throughout the session if they're topical, or at the end we'll have some time for Q&A. Okay, we're going to kick things off with a little poll. I am just trying to locate Kate said poll. Apologies. There we go. I swear this interface changes every session I have. There we go. Yeah, what area of your finance function is creating the most uncertainty, if any? And where are you focused on building greater confidence and control over the next financial year, next 12 months? And we'll share the results of this off the back of this session too, if you're curious.
Craig is asking whether you're on mute. Yes, you should be on mute, Craig.
Great. A few more answers rolling in. Cool. We're still going. Love the participation. All right, we're going to end that one and kick into the discussion. Okay, so as we all are very much aware, we're nearing the end of a challenging FY25. I guess in both your experiences, Nick, from what you're hearing, and Damon, more personally, how has the year reshaped the expectations and responsibilities placed on finance leaders?
Yeah,
sure,
do you want me
to? Yeah, kick off for us.
Why don't I kick off? Sure. So look, I think one of the great things about the finance leadership role is it is always changing. From one year to the next, it is different. I think that makes it really exciting for everyone in those roles and on this call, because there's new opportunities, new challenges in every year. I think some of the things I kind of hear from people and some of my own observations. The first one, this is probably a bit of a timeless piece, but I think there is the role is just becoming a lot more strategic. I think there is a lot of pressure coming from boards, from CEOs for the CFO role and the financial leadership roles to be more strategic, particularly as you're elevating into that leader persona, being able to step away or spend time on some of the more strategic problems facing the business and really be a trusted advisor and lieutenant to the CEO on board, and have the time to work through the most challenging business problems. Now, that obviously doesn't come automatically, because in order to have time to spend on those things, leaders need to be on top of the more compliance and operational components of their role. And so how I often see that manifest is the best leaders are able to find ways to automate or set up those systems and structures for success. So they are still running a well-governed, well-functioning compliance function, but they have the time then to spread their own wings on some of the more strategic elements of the role. And that's probably what I see some of the best ones doing. I think other themes that are front of mind that we'll talk about today, I think there's a big focus on risk and security. I think as the world changes, as technology improves, so does that available to the bad actors out there. So I think that's definitely something that is front of mind and keeps many leaders up at night. And then I think AI, like the world is changing quickly. The rate of change on AI is is huge, and so that creates its own set of challenges and opportunities for finance leaders in terms of how do you stay up to date, how do you stay relevant in that, and how do you add value to your organization around that. And so we'll talk about it later, but I think many people are looking to that finance leader role to provide some leadership in that area.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I may add to that, I think keeping up with everything what's going on, it's like actually our CEO sent a message to our exec team last night, and it's like we're closer to 2050 since 3 days than we were at the year 2000. So there's like 25 years has passed, and it's a bit like, whoa, time is going really fast. It's been uh, it's been a little over 2 years that ChatGPT launched as well. And I think wherever we see now in the business environment, like businesses starting to catch up with AI, which is exciting. It's a whole new technology to stay there. To Damon's point, like to keep on track of your compliance and your duties and your value adds and staying strategic in this space. It's really like time balancing probably. And I think it's not just advice or like something that is like excluded to the CFO, but it's probably for any leader in any position in the business. So definitely seeing that. And then when it comes to risk and compliance, what we see like from our Eftsure perspective is definitely a change last financial year. I've been in the business for 5 years, been speaking to a lot of finance leaders and fraud and payments
Yeah.
scams were always like a bit on the back recently, and definitely it's becoming more of an important item on board level as well. So we're hearing that from very large companies in the country that we all know very well, that it's become a very topical hot item. So yeah, definitely we see that change this financial year. See that happening.
Yeah. And a lot to, I guess, dig into today. And Damon, I'm not sure if this is too much of a repetition, but the second question we've got here is really from your perspective, how has the role of the CFO evolved over the past 12 months, especially in response to operational risk and new demands around data generation?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of these problems and challenges have been there for a while, but I think particularly that piece around data and systems, I think the pace of that has really picked up the last 12 months. And if you ask me why it's picked up, I think people are getting more excited about the potential for where AI tools might fit into the organization. Um, and and as many people here will be familiar, the your ability to get utility out of those tools often comes to the quality of the data that is fed into those tools. And that by quality of data, I mean both how clean the data is and how structured it is, but also what data the tool has access to generally. So I think there is a push across the organization to, hey, let's make everything available to the language models. Um, that introduces its own set of security challenges, that introduces its own set of data challenges, as in, is the data clean enough to be useful in that regard? And then I think that manifests back to the CFO role, because people then start to look at, well, what data systems do we have in our inventory today? And are these optimized? Do we have too many systems? Do we have systems that can be consolidated? I think those questions are starting to bubble up. Do we have the right security and data and access controls over those tools and systems? So suddenly, all of these things are coming into focus. I think CFOs are spending a lot of time trying to get that basic stack and house in order, so that, to my earlier point, they're ready to then propel themselves forward in much more strategic discussions and conversations.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Damon. And then Nick, we might jump across to you. In terms of what you're seeing over at Offshore, what do you see as the greatest financial exposure at the companies you work with now? Let's talk about internal and external threats or both. I guess are
Yeah,
your call outs for the biggest challenges?
yeah. I think like to Damon's point, right? Like the being secure as a business, it's all about like access control, making sure who has data. Um, what we see now with like being it like this new jump in tech, mainly AI. There's like a lot of excitement internally of people like probably like like raising my hand as a marketing team. We get like exposed to a lot of marketing tools out there that are now really cool with like the new fancy and flashy AI features. Um, like 2 clicks and all your CRM data is exposed, right? So it's really important to make sure that your data and the vendors that you work with are compliant with that. So having those checks and balances are really important, and I assume for finance data, it's probably even more important and stringent to do that. Um, so as business, you need to go through all the steps. What we also see now, and it's with the tech, is like the adversary, like the malicious actors or the lone cowboys out there that using this tech for bad intent. Like so that's probably now where there's a bit of an unfair gap between businesses and like in this particular case, cyber criminals. They have access to amazing tools. If anyone has heard me speak about this before, there's tools like a business invoice swapper that can exactly do what it says it does, sits in someone's inbox and changes the bank details on an invoice automatically. And those tools are freely, readily available. So thinking about how that can affect your business is really important. Um, so we're seeing like, especially like the last few weeks, we've got quite a few messages from finance leaders at really large organizations, like some of the Australians' largest ones. I won't name names, but we can all imagine what the top 50 the top 50 co companies are. So it's among those players. Um, they are starting to really pay attention to their exposure. They really start to see that, hey, cybersecurity or my IT team is no longer just in charge of the security and the systems to keep like bad actors out there. Finance plays a big role as well for making sure that the funds go to the right places and they're staying in control. Um, so I think that it always comes back to that. I feel like in finance, it's all about control and oversight. So yeah, I'm curious to see what Damon thinks about that. But um, yeah, we see that shift and definitely the threats coming from external sources are ramping up in both sophistication and in number of attempts.
Yeah. And I guess if you had to choose the most common blind spot, I mean, I think we're all kind of cautious of like phishing attempts and the more old school ways that
Yeah.
fraud happens. But is there anything new that's like a common blind spot that when you're chatting to finance teams they maybe didn't think of?
Yeah, I think like when we always talk about phishing emails, and it's like everybody seems to know. We regularly send out phishing emails to our staff, like to test whether they actually know. And some of those results are not what you always would expect. People tend to click on things. So even like the stuff that is like full frontal in view. Um, still happens like to companies that are really like at the forefront of the security cultures there. Um, I think where it really comes into like finance leadership, the blind spot is more like the attitude towards these problems. We're speaking to quite a lot of finance leaders and really been able to digest like 3 different mindsets. It's like the one that's very Aussie. It's like the she'll be right. We don't see any threats. We have systems in place that we've had that for years, and we've been safe and secure. And then more of a defensive mindset as well, where people invest in it, and especially around the time like it's coming up to the end of financial year. It's all going to be very busy. It's making sure to those mad dashes at the end of the year, making sure all that is compliant and ready for audit. That's when these cyber criminals strike as well. So this is like a great time to think about, hey, what are our defenses? What are we doing? So being aware of that is usually where we see things go wrong. So if you ask me about blind spots, it's those. It's like it's in the everyday tasks, and it's in the mindset of leadership.
And sure, I'd probably just add a couple of comments on that point. I think it is worth remembering that like all the attack vectors that we see are just getting more sophisticated as time goes on. So, once upon a time you would say to people, oh, the phishing emails are relatively easy to see because like the grammar's always clunky. Well, hey, in 2025, you can put an email through a large language model and clean up the grammar. So you now have written text that's probably indistinguishable from what a legitimate email might look like. If you think about voice, so that was historically a challenge to impersonate. There are commercially available tools today that can take a short 30-second clip of my voice or Nick's voice off the back of this webinar and impersonate us pretty accurately that would convince most people that it was myself or Nick actually speaking to them. We think about documents. So often people historically would say, hey, can you send me proof of X? And whilst you could forge documents in the past, I think the degree of difficulty to like do it required a little bit of effort, and sometimes there might have been giveaways that it was fake. 2025, you can like put that together in a flash, and have that out the door. And there's a lot of noise about that in consumer circles and TikToks with kids doing just that and the dangers. And I think the other bit I would just highlight on this is human behavior. So we talk about finance leaders not wanting to be left behind on AI, but finance leaders aren't unique in that I think most people don't want to be left behind either. And what that means is lots of people are out there wanting to try new things and test things. And so when someone gets an email or a tool that has an option to like integrate X or click on this to log into Y, and they think they're doing it because it's like the whiz bang new thing, it may actually be an attack vector that is just taking advantage of that. So I think this will always change, but I think even the traditional routes will be much more sophisticated in 2025.
Yeah, I think as well, it's like going on that point with selecting tech. I've been probably with the risk of getting a bit too technical, right? But there's now the way of how AI agents works. People in your organization just add tools, like you give access to tools. So you put in your security key of system, and boom, the AI has access to all that data that sits in that system. Now, those tools currently, I've been playing around with it. I love it. I've been like hooking it up to a test environment of a CRM to the Domino's API, and I was able to order myself a pizza by putting my address in the CRM and ask the AI, please order me a pizza, or order this person a pizza, and it came like half an hour later. So that's cool that you can do all this stuff. But where the risk is like these tools at the moment are being built by anyone. They're free on the internet available. It's 2 lines of code to give your AI access to those lines. And all of a sudden those could be malicious. Like no one knows. It's pretty hard to control. You need to be technical for that. So creating that safe space within your organization, same way as what we've done with API access between platforms. I think that's important to be aware of that. Like any leader for any team should be aware of those risks and dangers. It's not IT won't be able to keep up with that, all those compliance requests. That can go really, really quickly out of hand.
Yeah, and I guess it's at the end of the day, it's everyone's job as well. Doesn't fall on one particular person or team, but yeah,
Yep.
and I think we've done a good job of covering more the external threats. But Damon, in terms of internal, what process gaps are most likely to expose finance teams? And I guess how can they be addressed?
Yeah, so if we think about finance specific risks, Sean, maybe to break it down into a few buckets. I mean, one is the controls and things you can put in place prior to money leaving the system. So blocking things before it leaves the system is always preferred because it's just hard to get it back once it's left the system. So that's absolutely the best time to catch it. Yeah, where do we see gaps there? I think one is like the vendor verification. I think Nick's product does a great job, and Wheel has some great functionality around this as well, around making sure the recipient of the funds is either reviewed or verified in Nick's case, or in our case, approved by someone, so that a check has taken place before the money leaves the system. I think that one is super important. You can catch actually most things actually just by having that one little control in place. The other piece is just making sure the person's spending is authorized to spend it. And look, often the people spending money are employees. Um, and often it just comes down to like gaps in understanding about what they can spend or what they were permitted to spend. It is always much easier to ensure before the person spends that they are alerted that they're spending out of policy than to have the person spend it and then try and recover it from them later. Now, you might have rights in your employment contract to recover it later, but it's still a challenging conversation to have with people, and just introduces friction into the employer-employee relationship that that can be avoided if you have the right systems in place up front. If you then turn to like post payments, so once the money is gone, how can you like pick up on things? We see gaps sometimes with a lack of real-time information. So systems that don't update for days, maybe it's weekly or monthly, depending on how manual the system is. But if you're not getting the system to people that have the ability to provide the checks and balances and review it, their ability to act on that is constrained. So I think investing in systems and processes that quickly give you that visibility means you can quickly take action. And if indeed money has gone to the wrong place, the quicker you identify it, the greater your chance of recovering it.
I think to add on that, right? Like what we hear a lot is it's all about proactive control, whether that's on your spend management or policy for employees or your vendor payments. Like you want to be there before something happens that shouldn't happen. And what we see is like, and it probably comes back to the first question that Damon answered was, CFOs have the need to become more strategic. Like that's being demanded of them now. Well, there's all these proactive control measurements that traditionally take so much time to work through. Like what I feel is like there's now software in place and checks and balances, and I'm sure it's going to get so much better with AI used by the right vendors as well, to have that proactive control, but not with the time investment associated to it. Like that's really where there's like a huge opportunity, I think, for finance leaders in itself, is like to open up their calendars, their time, their team availability to be more involved in the business in a strategic manner as well. So yeah, definitely opportunities there.
Yep. Thank you. And I guess on a lighter note, we've covered what can go wrong, what we're seeing, the challenges. I guess, yeah, it'd be great to maybe flip the page a little bit and look at what's actually working. What are high-performing teams doing differently? When it comes to mindset, culture, or leadership. I get, yeah, what's working in finance teams out there, or has been over the last 12 months.
Damien, you want to start there as a
Yeah,
high-performance
look,
CFO?
yeah, look, let me share what a few things that I observe. So look, I think the best teams as a team are able to be strategic to the organization, like strategically add value. I think the compliance parts of the role are often things that can feel like a handbrake to the wider organization or slow the wider organization down, despite the best intentions of why it's being pursued in the first place. But I think when you're able to flip into that strategic role, you are then there collaborating with the wider business on its problems and working with other leaders, other people in the business to help them solve their problems and unlock the next leg of growth for the organization. So I think the best finance teams are able to get that compliance piece automated, under control, and then really go and help CEO, other functional leaders, other team members on organization problems. So that's probably the big one. I think great teams are always learning, like they're always out there learning, trying new things. Yeah, we've talked a bit about AI today, but I think that's one of many. There is, always new things to learn. As I said at the outset, the role is always evolving. So I think both for the leader and their teams, just encouraging a culture of continuous learning and innovation and being open and trying new things. And then the last one I'd comment on is probably just celebrating the success. Sorry, the success and the wins across the team. As the role changes, the skills will change, and the specific experiences you're looking for will change. And why that matters is there will be new people that come into the teams that bring specific skills that'll fill the gaps of others. And I think it's just about celebrating the success of each of those individual contributions and recognizing in this day and age, no one person will have a complete mastery of every part of the finance discipline. Like it is just too big to achieve that. By the time you think about tax and accounting and treasury and fundraising and data and security and AI, like no one is an expert across all of those domains. So you will need to rely on others. And how do you just elevate the wins and celebrate the success as people bring unique skills into the mix? I think the best teams harness all of those together and deliver a comprehensive solution to the wider business.
Yeah, if I can add, like mainly just from a control perspective, which is like where we touch most finance teams, or we have the touch points. It's we see that like organizations that are less susceptible to fraud attempts or have their controls in place, they really have leaders with strong and clear communication skills. Really set like an environment for employees to thrive in. Like these are the things I'm asking for you. This is the process. These are the things I'm not asking you to do ever. And a good example of that, for instance, is like a CEO impersonation scam, where a CEO would ask like a junior staffer quite often, like, "Hey, just worked with this vendor. Can you send them some gift cards and thank him?" It's usually a red flag, but it still happens a lot, and it's always like you would think from a leadership position, you would be like, "Hey, like my team wouldn't fall for that." But what they actually are falling for is like the lacking culture where they are encouraged to make decisions on themselves, or like align their behaviors to a certain policy and structure that you've given them. and align with that. So if that's missing, it makes it a lot more difficult. I think one of the tips that we had from one of our partners that we work with was like really powerful and made me think about my own leadership style as well. It was like she was saying in the case of like one of those frauds, it's like, have you given your accounts payable team or their junior staffer like a boilerplate message to send back to a senior leader? Because once you've done that, you're giving them the tools to actually also do it. There's like no excuse not to do it because here's the boilerplate message. Gives them a lot of confidence that that is an okay move to do for them. So really giving them that autonomy, even when it is like such a power gap between a junior and an executive leader in the business. I think that's what we see, like being really good cultures when it comes to control as well, and be very clear in the demands that you have. So far that's okay.
No, that's a great point. Empowering your team. Yeah, I guess across all departments. Yeah, and I like that, the templated answer as well. That's a really nice idea. Um, Now, I think we've touched on this a little bit in the session today, but back to AI. We recently ran a CFO community survey out to our members, and we found that only 15% of finance leaders were actively investing in AI. So I think testing the water, yes, but actually having a clear strategy rollout and paying for AI solutions within the business was only at 15%. So with that in mind, where are you actually seeing AI make a difference in finance operations? And I guess the big question is, where do you think the hype outweighs the value?
Yeah. Well, look, why don't I start then? Nick can jump in. I think if like both on that survey that you're referring to, Shauna, that we did, and if you look at external surveys, I think one thing is clear. Everyone believes that AI is going to transform their role and their function. I think that's almost universal. But the finance function in particular, and I would contrast this to disciplines such as perhaps coding or marketing, finance functions generally have been laggards in adoption of AI tools. And when I say adoption, I don't mean like just one person experimenting. I mean like the function embracing it and operationalizing it. It's generally speaking, it's pretty low across, right across the economy, both in Australia and globally. So look, perhaps a few thoughts on what that means and how that manifests. I mean, my own take is it is a super exciting time to be a CFO and see this evolution unfold. The thing I often look at is just the trajectory. So if you think about where we were at a couple of years ago, language models were terrible at numbers, which actually like I think turned off a lot of finance leaders because people like, my job is numbers, and the one thing the language models can't do is numbers. So there was this initial aversion to embracing it because such a core part of the role was outside of it. Anyone that's played around with those tools today would probably attest that for most numerical tasks, they're pretty good. They're not perfect, but they can now handle like most numerical activities really well. So even if you think about the evolution we've had in that couple of years, if you roll that forward, I think a lot of the rough edges will also fall away over the coming years, and the functionality and the capabilities are just going to move quickly. I think there is a little bit of a concern around what it means for like job security in finance functions, and whether all the roles are still required. One analogy I often think about is what happened with spreadsheets. So if you think about back to the 70s and 80s, Lotus 1, 2, 3 and Visual Calc came about. A lot of concern at that time that a lot of roles that traditionally prepared, the literal term, like spread out sheets of paper, aka spreadsheets, and did all those calcs by hand, a lot of those roles would fall away. And some of those roles did, but what happened is a whole new suite of roles were created as people were unlocked to pursue even more advanced analysis and capabilities and scenario modeling that just wasn't possible before. So my viewers will see something similar play out with the current roster of AI tools and functions where, yes, some tasks do fall away, but the ability for finance leaders to do more advanced things and become more strategic really picks up. We see a lot of pressure on finance teams from above, and by that, CEOs, boards, investors, the market, to really lead into these tools and really demonstrate that they are using it. I think a lot of finance leaders feel pressure to show some results or to show some way they're doing it. Yeah, we can talk shortly about what some of the initial steps are. But I think what we're seeing now in finance teams is small, practical pieces are working really well. So like could be like invoice validation or optical character recognition on receipts, things that have been around for a little while, but now they're actually much more sophisticated, really solve like genuine problems for people. I think those things are working and winning today. And to my earlier point, we've now got a foundation to build much more
Mm.
advanced things that'll come in time.
Yeah, I think like every time we go through like these technical advancements, right? Like I think like going all the way back, probably a story everyone can relate to, like when you do calculus in elementary school, and it's like, well, I'll like there's a calculator that can work, and your teacher would have said like, well, you won't have a calculator in your pocket everywhere you go. Now we do. There was cloud-based, like this whole way of AI is being sold to by marketers that lack a bit of creativity is the same way. Everything at that point was a cloud-based solution, and it gave us like massive productivity gains. Now we're seeing the same with AI. Like I think everybody can see there's productivity gains there. They will be seen as gains for the next few years. They become the norm. Like your job just elevates. We're just gonna expect more people, more work from people as the productivity like levels go up. The expectation will match that very shortly after. Um, so we see that. I think what you start to see in the adoption now is the larger organizations with like very strong technical capabilities. They've been able to spin up like safe AI agent networks and have been able to make big investments. I think IBM is quite on the front of that as well. They are really changing the way of how they operate. I think the parent company of Afterpay, most people would be familiar with, they call Block. They have created like their own AI agent operating system and encouraging people to do that as well. So those companies are really leading the way in their endeavors there. I think that will be made more available as that technology is being developed. We'll start to learn like cut through the noise, like what is good, what is bad. At the moment, I feel like webinars like this or any marketing flyer you open, the word AI is in there. Doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna be of material value to your operations. So that noise will go and like the winners will emerge, and by that time, it's good to be on a winner and know where you are.
Yeah. I've got a question here, which might be for everyone on the session if you want to jump in the chat, but someone's an anonymous attendee is asking, how is everyone keeping up with the latest compliance and risks? Is anyone using AI to check on how their business stacks up against latest compliance and risks? So yeah, curious if you are using AI to yeah, benchmark your business and yeah, keep up with the changing landscape there. Great. So next question. All right, we've talked a lot about AI, different solutions, different use cases. But if I'm someone on this session who wants to start exploring AI, maybe I'm not that familiar with it, where is a good place to prioritize or start first, I guess?
Look, my advice on this is not to place too high a burden on yourself in terms of where you would get to. I think the best thing people can do is like dip their toes in the water and just try things. Both try things with like, there are multiple providers, there are multiple ways of using them. Just try things. I think that is like the best thing you can do, and you'll build familiarity just just with that alone. Um, Going back to my earlier point, I also think it's about celebrating the win. So, in a lot of finance teams, we often have like a little bit of a gap where you might have, a few people not using it much, and then you might have one person that's like really embracing it and is like all in on it. And one challenge for leaders is how do you kind of level that across the group? So if you've got someone that is investing a lot of time or is is literate or like very familiar with it, how do you celebrate that win and disseminate some of those learnings across the wider group? I would start small with any projects you take on. I think I would say the same thing about like evaluating new tools or platforms or subscriptions for the business generally. Like start small, like go after something that's like bite-sized, execute it, iterate it, wait till you got that like humming and adding real value for the business. And then you've kind of got that to point to and then go and take on a much more ambitious project. I think, you know, starting with the view of I want to automate the whole finance function at the outset is just for uh, headed for a challenge. But I think if you just pick something more like bite size, like, hey, I want to like implement a tool to like go and do receipt validation, or I want to implement a tool to like, check the supplier names or something. I think that's manageable. You can get the wins and do it. One thing I've seen work well is just doing a little bit of a hackathon with the team. Could just be the finance team, or you could invite wider members of the business, depending on how big the organization is. But just using that to really pull the ideas out from the team, see what expertise already exists in the organization, challenge each other on what the art of the possible might be. And even if you're not putting those things into action immediately, I think it'll open everyone's mind to the possibilities. And as time goes forward and tools and solutions become more advanced, some of that thinking has already taken place. So that would be my like practical tips on how to move forward.
Yeah, I think like it's an interesting question, right? We had like a question from our board, and it was literally like, "What are you doing with AI?" question mark, like open-ended question. And I think that there might be more people being exposed to those kind of questions. I think when you start to explore, it's like it's building muscle, right? Like this is a new technology with great opportunities. Build the muscle externally from your organization. There's a lot of information out there. Like create yourself like a sandbox environment, where there's like all data compliance and all that, and governance is not an issue, and you can play, you can make mistakes, use dummy data. You can even ask an LLM to generate you dummy data, so there's no need for that. And all these tools offer free trials. Sign up for them, play around with it. That's good. I think then once you have, like as Damon said, like the few use cases, is really understanding like, okay, what is the economic return on this? It's really like catching a falling sword at the moment when it comes to AI. If you wanted to do something 6 months ago, that may have been a price tag of like $5,000-6,000 to solve a certain problem. 6 months from later now, it's provided free by one of the big providers. There's a bit of a running joke on the internet, like whenever Google or OpenAI launches like the new AI products, there's like 1,000 Silicon Valley startup founders that are out of a job immediately. So if you are a customer of those, like you're there. So really, like it wouldn't be a problem if you have like a serious business case for it and can see the benefit in your business. But definitely when you do that, make sure that security, data governance, you're in charge of that. And probably a lot of vendors, especially software vendors, will have solutions for that. Like we're all like every software vendor is thinking about how can I stay ahead? How can I keep my product like market ready and competitive by also using AI. So a lot of that is probably the right way. Thread carefully, be skeptical, and create a sandbox for yourself to try and play.
Yeah. I think as well, if we think about who the best people are to be experimenting, it's probably like senior finance leaders, right? Because they're probably going to be a little bit more cautious and concerned about risks of compliance, keeping that data secure. So good testing ground to start on.
And Sharon, I'd probably
Where
just add,
yeah.
sorry, just add one last point to that. It's also good to be aware like what your existing tools are doing to integrate some of these solutions as well. So I think, introducing a brand new solution or introducing, as Nick said, just wiring up a whole lot of things may expose a whole lot of data unnecessarily, but it's worth just looking at what your current tech finance stack is doing today. And I'll just share one little example that's close to home for me. Like, Weel spend management solution. One of the things that we've invested a lot in is getting our using AI to validate receipts. So just as the receipt comes in, making sure that it feels using AI like a real legitimate receipt. It's not just a photo of someone's hand or a coffee cup. That is embedded directly in the product. So anyone already using it benefits from that without having to wire in external things or increase their security exposure. That's just one small example, but I think you would be hard pressed today to find SaaS software vendors that aren't integrating AI into their product in some way. So I think it's just being thoughtful about it and just making sure you're just staying up to date with the developments in the tech stack you've already invested in implementing and configuring for your organization, because that is still AI, even if it's facilitated through someone else.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Didn't think of that. It's always, what other tools can we use? But so many platforms now are running pilots of programs, and if you're already securely integrated with them, then it's a great testing ground. We are fast approaching the end of the session, and I hate to run over because I know everyone's busy. I guess to kind of wrap things up, if you could recommend one thing every finance leader should audit or address or focus on before the end of financial year, what would it be? Might be a tricky question.
So let me go first. Every year, end of financial year, we see at Eftsure, we see a ramp up in scam attempts. People are busy. People are trying to get like ready for their audits, closing the year out. This is the time, like cyber criminals know this as well. This is where they get attacked. I feel like this is the message I'm repeating every year to anyone who wants to listen or has to listen. This is the time to be extra diligent. I really encourage everyone on this call in their next team meeting to talk about cybercrime and the heightened awareness of it. It saves a lot. Payment fraud as well. I've seen some questions in the question box about how a vendor was hacked. Those are issues those are problems that we fix at Eftsure as well. We can help with that control. Probably a bit too late for the end of financial year to get it fully implemented, but there are ways to control that via training and awareness as well. So yeah, that's my message. Every financial year, end of financial year, I keep repeating myself.
And look, Shona, I would just share that this particular window, like the month of June before you get to like 30 June, can often be a great time to just pause and take stock on your current setup, software, processes, systems, and just see if it's still fit for purpose as your organization and the world has evolved. I think, it's easy once you get to 30 June just to fall into the trap of, oh, now we're preparing accounts and getting ready for the audit. And the next 3 months is a bit of a a blur, but this can actually be a great time to like start to do some of that strategic thinking and explore different solutions. And look, maybe to Nick's point, you have to like rush off and like put a solution in place by 30 June, but yeah, maybe you are exploring what is possible at the moment so that you've then got some irons in the fire. And as you go through your audit process or a year-end process and it identifies that there are some gaps or challenges, you've already got some ideas on how you might solve them or what the right tools for the job might be. So yeah, that would be my thing. Use this time if you've got a little bit of a gap to explore what is possible and what the state of the art is with all the tools in the market.
Yeah, no, good points and ideas. I think I've got time for a question. Got one from the chat. Our processes for all departments are all over the place. Being the head of finance, how can I start helping my company to put all the processes in order? So sounds like a big challenge. But I guess what's the role of a head of finance in supporting all departments with processes?
Do you want me to take? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, I would say, look, one of the challenges here is just winning hearts and minds to have people embrace and get behind what you're trying to do. So a couple of tips I would share on this just quickly in the interest of time. One is like just educating people on why you're doing what you are doing in the finance function. Like what is the thing you are trying to achieve and how does it enable the organization to achieve its success? So for example, if something is like required for an audit, even just going back to basics, like why is the organization audited in the first place? Does that help the organization win credibility with larger customers or financiers, like debt or equity capital providers or whatever it might be? I think just taking them through why you're doing what you're doing. And then again, probably just going back to my earlier comment about what sets teams up for success. I think if you're able to show that you're adding strategic value to those functions because you're helping them with their problems, I think you can it helps win trust for that quid pro quo where you're saying, hey, let me help you with your commercial, operational growth challenges. By the way, can you help me with my challenge, which is I need to get these receipts or these processes in order. So that'd be my 2 cents.
Yeah.
yeah,
I think like speaking as like in a marketing department, which like the commonality between marketing and finance is we are supportive functions, like marketing very much towards sales. See them as your customer, right? Like what is the customer service of your department? Like, is it easy to engage with you? Is it easy? Are you adding value in that process? I found throughout engaging like our sales team in marketing and trying to get stuff from it is really to be seen as like strategic support. Most of the time, like we know better what our customers want and need or what we should get from them as well. And they become pretty compliant if you can like reduce friction. So yes.
yeah. No, thank you. All right, we're at time. We have 1 minute. I have another question actually. I'm going to sneak it through. Someone has mentioned that they have an AP supervisor who's maybe not performing, and for lack of a better term, they are stuck with her. Legislation's not on their side. What advice do you have for them in terms of managing processes and supporting that function when you've got maybe a staff member that's not performing how they should be?
Look, I'll pick this up. Look, I
Yeah,
think this just falls back to like, just fundamentals of performance management, which is, I think, it's important on leaders to be really clear on the expectations and to have those set out. I think it's then really important to set out and explain, and to be honest, at this point, probably put in writing so that there is no ambiguity where someone is falling short. So that is recorded. I think you can then point back to that document as kind of a source of truth or a record of the conversations that took place. I think the common pitfall I would often see play out here is the communication is just not aligned in terms of how the leader may perceive the person to be performing and how the individual perceives they are performing. And without that clear written communication, it can sometimes get lost. I think the only other thing I would say is don't be afraid to like use the help and resources in the organization. So ordinarily, the people and culture or HR team are well versed and well experienced in dealing with these. So if you had that challenge, at the right time, use the resources available in the organization to get the support you need to manage those conversations and get their pointers or advice.
Great, thank you. We've covered it all, finance and HR in this session. It was a bit of a curly one, thanks, Damon. Second poll we're going to launch today is really selfishly just to find out if anyone on this session would like to learn more about Weel and Eftsure, the people that brought you this session today. Yeah, we can send you some more information. I'll leave that up for 30 seconds. But yeah, a huge thank you to everyone for taking time out of your busy days, your mornings and afternoons to join us. We'll be sharing the recording and the poll results with everyone in an email that will go out tomorrow. Yeah, and in the meantime, well, thank you. Sorry, we're just reading the comments in the chat. A huge thank you to Damon and Nick for your time as well and expertise. Super insightful. Yeah, we might have to do this again.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.